You're listening to the Public Health Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Dr. Charlotte Huntley. Welcome to Public Health Entrepreneurs. This is the podcast for visionary leaders who are ready to transform public health and healthcare, or whatever your other industry is, through innovation. I'm your host, Dr. Charlotte Huntley, and as a public health entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience in healthcare and public health, I absolutely understand the unique challenges and the opportunities that come with bridging multiple disciplines. So if you're an interdisciplinary professional, someone who has expertise across different fields, then you're in the right place. Now, on the episode today, we are going to talk about charging too low. So this comes from a question that I received. I was asked, what changed when you started charging your true worth? I love this question. And as I began to craft my response and think about this, it's actually quite simple. But before I give you the simple response, I want you to understand that I invested a lot of time and energy and money working with coaches to help me address some of my mindset concerns and challenges around money. We hear this a lot about the money mindset, but this is a real issue. Some of us, if you grew up like in a church, you may have grown up feeling like there's something, degrading about money. You may have some thoughts around money that make you feel like having money is a bad thing. If you grew up in a family where they talked about people who had a lot of money being a certain type of person, snobby or uncaring, and then you grow up with this mindset, you have all these hangups around what it means to have a lot of money. You may want a lot of money, but then you feel guilty because of the way you grew up. And this is not to say you had a bad family or anything was wrong with growing up in the church. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that we can embrace some of these negative mindsets and develop a negative relationship with money at an early age that's beyond our control. It does not mean that our parents weren't good or our growing up wasn't positive. Our childhood experiences have us wrapped our thoughts around it in a negative way. So it doesn't matter however you developed a negative association or negative relationship with money. If you're an entrepreneur looking to grow your business, you really have to address it. And I recognized it. Recognizing it is the first step. I did things that I could do to, make steps to address it early on. But when my business really started to grow, these challenges around the mindset, my beliefs around money became a real issue. So I invested in some really good books. I invested in some excellent coaches and coaching programs around developing a positive mindset around money. So I really want to take a few moments to emphasize that and to explain that to you. Now, if you are somebody, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I have a lot of hangups around money, I want you to reach out to me through our website and let me know. And I will respond. I can recommend a couple of books that I've read. I can recommend, I don't know if the coaches I used before are still offering those services, but if that is something that you are really wrestling with, then reach out and let me know. If I get enough people who are really reaching out to me on that, then I'll create a deeper dive training, because I feel like it's really personal for some folks and it's something that people don't like to open up about. And I really encourage you to push past that and really address it, because it's one of the best things that I could have done. If you really wanted to grow your business and have the impact and serve in the way that you want to serve in a big way, then you're going to have to address these issues. If you have any kind of negative mindset, relationship, belief around money and earning money, then it's something that has to be addressed. I know that it's also really popular in public health. I hear people all the time argue that, yes, we are underpaid. That's a fact. That's not an argument, nothing to argue about there. But as a public health industry, people almost glorify the low pay. They'll say things like, I didn't come into public health expecting to get rich. Now, although that's true, because the salaries are not high paying, that narrative, I personally really want it to change. Because no one goes into healthcare saying that. If you're a public health doctor, then your expectation is that you're not going to earn as much money as a medical doctor. But does that mean our work is less important? We undervalue our industry, and then we don't make as much as our healthcare counterparts and we feel some kind of way about it. But historically, that's the way it's been set up. So that's a little bit of a soapbox. I want us to change that. But I know a lot of people will. I've had people, as my business started to grow, actually say very negative things about me. The assumption is I'm after the money. And that's supposed to put me down and make me feel like I don't care. So those things can be farther from the truth. And that exists in public health. It's the mindset around earning money, even in our industry. So the mindset issues are just all around us. So it's something that we have to, if you have a negative association with earning money and building a business and thriving in public health, then that's something that I encourage you to invest in addressing before you can really be able to, you can only go so far without addressing it. I'll put it that way. Okay, so now back to the question, what changed when you started charging your true worth? So I'm going to answer that by going through a couple of things with you. I think that when you are charging too low, these are some of the things that you're going to experience. When you charge too low, when you are doing work for a client, let's say you're a consultant and you have a client that wants you to create, help them solve this problem. You're going to do a project for this client, this organization or individual, whatever the case may be. But when you charge too low, you build resentment because first of all, that client is not going to value the effort that you're putting into the work. It's going to be undervalued because you're coming in at this low price point and you're doing all this hard work and you're going to build resentment because that client doesn't appreciate the work you're putting into this project. It's just like, I'm working so hard for these few dollars on this project. You don't start a business and go into it with that feeling. So when you are charging too low, it's the potential for that resentment to build up. You work super, super hard. And then when another thing, you work really, really hard. And then maybe they dismiss your advice or they don't put it into action. What you provide for them through the project, it may sit there and nothing goes, it sits on the shelf or nothing happens with it. That's not a good feeling for you who put the work in. Yes, you got paid for it, but you also care. You're likely going to care way more about the outcome or the change that's supposed to happen or what's supposed to be put into place than to just do the work, get paid, and then nothing else happens, it sits and collects dust. That doesn't feel good. But when it's low value, then they don't really have to do anything with it. It's like, okay, well, we did that thing and okay, let's move on to the next. It's a few dollars out of their pocket and they move on. Another thing that happens is you get exhausted. Like the hustle is exhausting. And to not receive good pay for what you've done just keeps you exhausted. And that's not rewarding. That's not a reason to go into business to have that feeling. Charging too low teaches others to undervalue you and your work. That's really the bottom line. When you charge too low, you're teaching people to treat you that way and to undervalue that way. That's kind of going back to what I described in the comparison of public health and healthcare. When that's historically what's been done, that's what people expect. And then we're all in this low delivery mode. And I wouldn't encourage anyone to start a business that's going to be if that's the outcome and that's how you're going to feel. There's nothing exciting about having a business where you feel exhausted and undervalued. That's why you're trying to leave the job more than likely. Now, this is not to be confused with when you're first getting started. You just charge whatever and get started, and you're going to charge too low at the very beginning. So don't beat yourself up. If you're listening to me and it's like, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm charging too low. That's the problem. Everyone does that at the beginning. Even when you think your price is okay, you're just getting started. That's okay. Okay, I'm talking about continuing and going on that way as a practice. So here is what changes when you can start charging your worth. And for me, when I decided that the value of what I'm putting out is worth this dollar amount, and I, wanted to start charging my worth, what I was providing to my clients, I often think of it as a transformation. It's more than the tangible 5 hours for this or a checklist. It's really a transformation. And I've watched it and I see it and I experience in the work with my clients. So when I started charging more of my worth or the higher value that matched what I was putting into the work and the project, I noticed right away that I show up as a completely different person. I really surprise myself. I show up as super coach in the coaching situations or super consultant in the consulting projects. I show up as the best version of myself. I sit up taller. I'm alert. I'm excited. I'm energetic, eager to go and dive into the project. And it is amazing how I challenge my clients. I do the work. I'm just on it. I'm in the best version of myself when I started charging closer to the value of what I'm putting into the client, my worth. So that's one of the biggest things I noticed. And then the other big thing I noticed is that my clients also show up at a much higher level. They are ready to work. They are invested and they're ready for the change. They do the work. They put it into action. They're proactive. They're prepared. It's incredible when you're raised up to a higher level of showing up and then your clients match you. You get so much accomplished. And the end result is you have a greater impact on the community that's being served. So it is a win-win-win situation all the way around. I think once you do the work to get through some of the mindset issues and the challenges and start charging your worth and showing up, then everyone wins. So I encourage you on that level. And like I said, if you have anything to say about some of these challenges or if that's where you're stuck, reach out at publichealthentrepreneurs.com. Just go straight to the contact us and send us a message and explain some stuff in detail. If I get a lot of people reaching out, then I will put something together where we can start to address this. But maybe I've given you enough on this episode to help you get moving forward. I hope so. At any rate, I hope it's been a very helpful episode. I encourage all of you to level up and experience that from both sides, yourself and your clients. All right, everyone. Until next time, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for listening. Visit publichealthentrepreneurs.com to learn more.